Liz, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. This is such a treat.
Hi, Kristen. So nice to meet you.
Well, I got to watch the reunion last night. I'm an elder millennial, so this is right in my wheelhouse. I'm curious about, the chicken and egg of the reunion. I guess who instigated the idea for this? How did this come together?
Yeah. Well, you'll probably get four different stories from me, Kristen, Lauren, and myself, but they're all kind of end up in the same place. I was asked by Stephen and Kristen to be on the podcast, Back to the Beach. Must have been 3 or 4 years ago, and I hadn't rewatched the show in those 20 years. So I, after I went on, I I said to Stephen, I was like, have you guys, I know the high school reunion's coming up. Have you guys thought about it? I think now is the time. And it seemed like the podcast really allowed them to come to a place where they were excited to talk about it. And there was clearly an audience there. So Stephen said, yeah, Kristen and I have been talking about it. Would you come on board? And I said, I would love to, but I want you guys on board as executive producers this time. I want you to be in control. If we're going to do this, I want to do it with your blessing on every aspect. And then we got Lauren on board right away, and we all developed the concept. And it was really important to us that we revisit the places we went back to in Verite, all the iconic bonfires and coffee clutches and scenes that we knew would be super important to audience members like you that love the original show. But then we had the stage day too. So it was really born of really being fans of the Friends special, because the Friends special, they kind of brought them back to the set,
Right.
and they really kind of allowed them that space to just talk through things. So I think what's great is the stage day. We really unpack things. We really say, let's go visit what happened in the show. Was this, what happened in spring break? What happened here? And then seeing them in verite scenes, you get to see really how deep those lifelong friendships go. Hearing Lauren and Stephen talk about the first time Stephen met his wife Alex, and Lauren, they've just, I think we hopefully delivered it all to the fans. I'm curious
It's
what you
I
thought.
mean, I tell people, I came to Laguna Beach through the hills. So that was the
Mhm.
hills was my gateway, and then I went
Yes.
back. And so, for me, it's those two shows together. I mean, it's why I wanted to live in LA. It's why I wanted to do a lot of the things that when I went to Ladue for the first time for an event to cover it, I was very happy that I got to like cross that off the list more than anything else that I actually was working to do at that time. Uh,
That's like truly crossing the threshold of LA to land at Ladue. That's like an
yeah,
iconic club. Yeah.
exactly. But I mean, it's funny to show Laguna Beach to younger people today, or even people that are reality fans now, because they're always, I think, very surprised by what is discussed in the show, which is that, this was just average stuff. Now we're used to reality television being so
Yeah.
outsized and so glamorous and so over the top. For you, as somebody who's been working in reality TV for as long as you have, how do you see the landscape changing from when you did Laguna Beach back in the early 2000s?
Yeah. Well, it was the first one. It was the first
Yeah,
reality show. I mean,
yeah, it's the Wild West.
it was the Wild West. We also added the additional layer of not doing interviews. So we had to kind of invent the pickup, which was like, oh, can you go to the nail salon and talk about what happened? Because we can't just get that in an interview bite. So we made our jobs harder for ourselves. But I think what is special about the show and why it's lasted the test of time is it was such a capsule, right? Of like, we protected these kids. No one knew what the show was going to become. They were their authentic selves. There wasn't social media. They were a real group of friends. So they weren't vying for more camera time. They were just like, hey, Steven, like, what's up? What are we going to do for prom? How are you going to ask Jessica to prom? How are you to Dieter? So it was the story. We didn't have to manufacture anything because it was
Yeah.
already ongoing. the love triangle was already going on when we started filming because Steven, the concept preceded the casting. And so when we found them, to know that Steven and Kristen had been dating, broke up for a bit, he dated Lauren during that time, that he and Kristen were getting back together. It was this great story that we immediately could plug into, but then we had such great other cast members, like Morgan was a virgin and she didn't get into her first college acceptance letter. So there were really iconic moments happening that were very relatable. So it was just magic that we found them.
Do you think with the way that the reality landscape is right now, where everything is so big, it feels so big, the situations and the
Yeah.
character, do you think you could do something like Laguna Beach today at the scale that you were doing it at that time?
Well, it's funny because a lot of, and now I remember like your original question. I think that reality has changed from that time. I think because everyone's gone to high school and relates to, you know, a dance or something going on, like a prom ask being the nth degree of your life at that time. It wasn't table flipping, it wasn't backstabbing. It's really innocent when you
Yeah,
rewatch it. However, it's
so
also
much.
very reflective of what high school is. And I think it was funny because so many people are like, "Ooh, they were drinking and they were talking about hooking up." It's like, do you have teenagers? Do you know what's going on? Like,
Yeah.
hello. So, but that's what really I was surprised about, was how innocent it was. And I'm so glad we captured the little moments, like Lo talking to her mom about where to stand to get the photo, and the parents at prom. I think it still holds up. Would you shoot it that way now? I can't even answer that because it was like the first of its kind. We were figuring it out as we went. And so it's impossible to answer that because now obviously I've gone on to do other television shows and watched other television shows. I would hope the audience would still embrace it. They still are. New viewers are watching it over and over again. So that makes me feel good. But you certainly wouldn't be able to produce it the same way just because of social media and phones, and they'd be getting instant, they'd be living their life out there already, so people would know their storyline. So it's
I
impossible to
can I can
answer.
tell you, somebody that watches it still on Pluto all the time, it still holds up.
Oh,
Especially now
good.
we live in a world, I mean, watching that sequence played back of Kristen and going to the grocery store and being like,
Oh,
what do we
the
buy?
best.
I unfortunately teenagers today still don't have those life lessons. I mean, they're not teaching that stuff in school, so it still is relatable.
Right. But there's always that first time you cook somebody's significant other and you don't really know what you're doing. And I think that scene is so funny. And there was such natural humor in the show
Yeah.
because these guys were just, they were so funny. And that scene in particular just is so memorable and so relatable, of like, is it half a pound? I remember going to the grocery store and not really knowing what I was ordering when I was first shopping. It's not something that comes to you until you've ridden that bike.
Exactly. Well, I think you bring up a really interesting point about that there are, I mean, I remember a time before cell phones were ubiquitous, before social media existed, and to I think that's the thing that is so refreshing as we're now weirdly going through this 90s Y2K revival. People want that. They want
Yeah.
that simplicity and that separation from social media. I'm curious, to how you looked at that then, in terms of, the kids had cell phones, they use them, but it still
Yeah.
never feels as ubiquitous than it would just maybe 2 or 3 years later.
Right, because they really only use them to call each other.
Yeah,
There wasn't texting, there wasn't Instagram, so they couldn't post their lives constantly, and there was nothing to check.
yeah.
Facebook came out the week we delivered the test tape to MTV, and so they didn't have profiles. They weren't checking to see what people. So, yeah, I think it's completely. It would have been a completely different show, and
Yeah.
it's sad. I do love right now the being a huge Miley Cyrus fan, and my girls were huge Hannah Montana fans. I do think with everything going on in the world, politically, globally, um, people just want and long for a simpler time when you could be away from it all. No one gets a minute where they're not inundated with information. And I think that that is what draws people to these nostalgic moments. Is it's more than every generation has their nostalgia, but I feel like it's a particular moment in time right now where it feels dangerous. No one trusts social media, and this feels really safe. And it's also high school, so it's like
Yeah.
a very innocent time that I think everyone longs to go back to. Not
I
everyone, but
Exactly. I mean, you watch something like, Doing the Hills just a couple years after that, and the cell phones and social, it's a different, it feels like a different world at that point.
yeah, and by that time it became really hard to control kind of like the
Yeah.
paparazzi at the clubs and what was happening at the clubs. Like their lives got so much bigger that it became harder to control the story before we showed it in the show. And then we realized like, okay, well, this is we just have to embrace what's going on because we're never going to be able to control it. But I think that's also what's special. It's interesting that you started watching The Hills first and then went to Laguna, because it's almost it's for me, like obviously I can't put the genie back in the bottle, but it must be so interesting because it was so different tonally.
Yeah.
And it was, we talked earlier with some folks about how, nothing really happened in the episodes, but everything happened because to a teen girl, you know, what is really important in high school is your relationships, what you're wearing, who is bringing who to prom. And that's also what's so special about high school is like it's there's not huge stakes, right?
Yeah.
They're all emotional, they're all relationship, but you don't have many problems. So you have to kind of focus on what's happening
The
in your social
immediate.
life. Yeah, the
Yeah.
immediate.
Yeah.
And so a lot did happen. It was just that it was for a very particular audience. I remember Brian Graydon saying, who was head of MTV, he said you don't have to be the favorite show of everyone. You just have to be the favorite show of one audience. And we started with the younger teen girls, and once they made it go what we would say viral now, like once it became a phenomenon, then everyone else watched, right? Like you had 40-year-old men watching with their wives, and it just became this crazy thing that everyone was invested in the storyline.
Exactly. Well, having seen how well it worked with this reunion, is there a desire to do another, maybe a Hills reunion in the future? Not that I want reunions because it makes me feel older every time, but is there a desire to maybe do more with this format?
I think that there's desire meets whether it'll ever happen. That's where the there is. I think that was a very different show, and because this show was about a group of friends who are really still all friends, it felt safe to go back there. And so we'll see. We'll see. I know the audience would love it.
I think the reunion element I think it would really show that distinction that you talk about with the two shows, because the
Yeah.
personalities in The Hills far more outsized than the personalities, I think, in Laguna Beach. So it'd be
Yeah.
interesting to see if it would be more in line with modern reunions than something
Yeah.
small and intimate like this. Which would
Yeah.
be cool, but also, I don't know if that loses the uniqueness.
Well, I think the reason the reunions on Traders or Bravo work is because they're so recent, right? All the stuff that went down was just a few months ago. And so it's still raw, it's still emotional for the cast members to like go after the other folks. And that's why you get that volatility and those friendships overspilling into the studio. Um, it's been 20 years, Lauren's a mom. She's happily living in Laguna Beach with her amazing husband, William, and two boys. And like, she's happy. And I think for her, it it would be hard to drum back up that emotion. So, but I will let her speak to that.
Well, they're giving me the hook. Thank you so much. It's been such a treat to get to talk to you today. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. So nice to meet you.